Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Positive Action. This is week number 6. Now, I got a lot of stuff in store for you today, and I also have a little bit of a surprise if you stay around to the very end. I promise it's going to be worth it. Oh, what did I get myself into? All right, welcome back, everyone. I am so excited for you to be joining me for today's lesson. It's going to be really good. We're finishing out how we feel socially. I will be honest, this is kind of a deep lesson, but it's still a really good one. Also, I'm a little nervous, but more on that later. For right now, let's just get into the lesson. So remember, I introduced how we feel socially by discussing different ways that we communicate and connect with people. And I put a pretty big emphasis on social media and the relationships that we form through it and with it.
Oh, you're the best friend that I ever had. I've been with you such a long time. You're my sunshine, and I want you to know that my feelings are true. I really love you. Oh, you're my best friend.
All right, so this leads me into what we're going to talk about today. So I mainly want to focus on building healthier relationships, but I have 3 main points to make here. So today we're going to talk about influence, guilt versus shame, and vulnerability.
Who's ready? I'm ready. Who's ready? I'm ready. Who's ready? I'm ready.
All right, so let's start with influence. So I know I've discussed a lot about influence in my previous lessons, but I really just want to hone in today on how powerful influence can be. Now, influence can have a pretty big impact on our future. So let's just say that I wake up and I'm in a really good mood today. I'm living that positive action wheel lifestyle. I'm strutting my stuff. I'm giving people the finger guns. So let's just say because I'm having a really good day and I feel really good, I've decided that I'm going to start doing little acts of kindness for people. So for instance, maybe I give people a compliment or I'm holding the door for someone. Let's say that I'm at your school walking down the halls and I see this girl that drops her books and I decide to go over and help pick them up. Now, each one of these interactions is going to create a positive ripple effect in the world. I don't necessarily know how far that ripple effect is going to reach, but it is going to continue to grow and grow and grow. So let's look at that person that dropped their books. Let's call her Sarah. So Sarah's been having a pretty bad start to her day. Not only has she dropped her books, but now she's almost late for class because of it. Now, because of my act of kindness and helping her out, she feels a lot better and she made it to class on time.
We did it! We did it! We did it! Yay! Always team up. We did it!
Now, as Sarah's going about her day, she finds herself at the cafeteria and she sees that there's this kid that's sitting alone by himself. Because she's having a really good day now, she decides to go over and sit by that kid and just talk. And so through doing this, she started to build a relationship and a connection with another person. So this is that ripple effect that I was talking about that just continues to grow. And we can actually trace this back to my act of kindness. And maybe it goes back further than that. Maybe someone was kind to me and that caused me to feel good and just kind of continue that ripple effect. Now, let's play the opposite game. Let's say that I woke up this morning and I'm not in a very good mood. Maybe something happened to me the day before. Maybe something's going on in my home life or just with friends, but I'm having a pretty bad day. Now, let's look at the same scenario with Sarah. I see that she dropped her books, but instead of going over to help her out, I just walk by because I'm just not in the mood. Now, because Sarah's having a bad day and just a late start to her day, she ended up late to class and got in trouble with the teacher. So as lunchtime rolls around, Sarah is still in a pretty bad mood. And she does go to the cafeteria to get some food, but she doesn't really want to see or talk to anyone. So she just gets her food and leaves. This means that she never interacted with that kid that was sitting by himself. Now, it turns out that that kid that was sitting by themselves is having a pretty bad day. In fact, a pretty bad week or couple of weeks. You see, he hasn't been doing too well in school, and his home life isn't any better. He's really stressed out, and there's just a lot of pressure on him. Honestly, he feels like no one can even understand him, and it doesn't help that people tend to pick on him. As he sits there by himself, he just starts to question if anyone would really miss him if he wasn't around anymore. Now, I'm going to stop the story here because I think you can understand how this can progress. But let's look back at the chain of events. This kid ended up in a terrible situation, possibly a life-threatening situation, all because of the decisions that I made when I woke up that morning, when I decided not to help out Sarah. This is the power of influence. It has the ability to save lives, but also it could take lives. You see, I may never know Sarah personally, and more than likely, I'm never going to actually meet that kid that was sitting by himself. But the act of kindness that I gave to Sarah ended up saving that boy's life. But it also could have taken his life had I chosen to allow my negative attitude to influence the people around me. Now, you may think that this isn't important, or that it doesn't apply to you, or maybe it's not your fault if Sarah didn't interact with that boy. But regardless, you should know that these small choices that you make every single day do create a ripple effect. You may not know how far that ripple effect goes, but you can be sure that it's not going to stop after just one interaction. Now, look, we all have our bad days, and we've all made mistakes and said things or done things that we shouldn't have done, and maybe we feel guilty for them. But some of us may also feel shame or ashamed of what we've done. So I want to share with you some of the differences between guilt and shame. You see, guilt is the act of doing something wrong. You know you made a mistake. You're guilty. But shame is completely different. You see, shame doesn't say that you made a mistake. Shame convinces you that you are a mistake, that you are the problem. So here's a few more examples of the differences between guilt and shame. So guilt is the actual behavior or the act of what we do, whereas shame is the belief that what you've done is flawed, that you are flawed. You see, guilt focuses on our behaviors and our values, whereas shame focuses on our feeling of self-worth, this feeling or belief that we're unlovable. You see, with guilt, you can feel bad about the behavior and still respect yourself. But with shame, you have this feeling of low self-worth. You feel like you're the problem. Now, we've all experienced shame, this feeling of I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not strong enough, whatever it might be. But if you don't open up about shame, it will start to control your life. Now, I want to share with you a video clip of this little boy. This is probably one of my favorite videos, but while you're watching this, I want you to determine whether or not he's experiencing guilt or shame.
Another cup. Apples. This one for me. Uh-oh. I gotta clean that. I will build it. Uh-oh, I built. Oh. Slippery. I gotta clean that.
I love this video. I could watch it over and over and over again. But I love how the kid reacts here. He doesn't feel ashamed of himself. He knows that he made a mistake. He says, uh-oh, I gotta clean it up, and he goes and cleans it up, right? So there's more guilt here than shame. He definitely knows he made a mistake, but he doesn't feel like the mistake, right? Now, a lot of our upbringing can determine how we deal with certain situations. So let's say that he actually was raised in a house that instead of telling him that he made a mistake, that they punish him for that mistake. Well, more likely he's going to feel shame because that reinforced punishment on top of the mistake that he already made is going to convince him that he is the problem, that he is the mistake. Now, nobody is perfect, including adults. We all make mistakes. And sometimes we say things or do things that can have a lasting impact on the people around us. So it's really important that when you're in a situation like this, where maybe it's a younger sibling does something that you know is wrong or they've made a mistake, how you interact with them, what you say to them, how your tone of voice is, all of that can have a huge influence on how they feel. Are they going to feel guilty or are they going to feel ashamed? So the next time you find yourself in a situation where someone's made a mistake, try and remind them that it's okay, because this is going to save a lot of heartbreak.
Hey, be different. Be nice. Just smile. I promise it'll change your life. Hey, be different. Be nice. Just smile. I promise it'll change your life.
Be nice, be nice, be nice, be nice. The love you give is the love you get, so be nice and change your life. Be nice. Be nice.
All right, so the final point that I'm going to make today is about vulnerability. Okay, so in order to do this effectively, I need to introduce you to an amazing woman, Brené Brown. So some of you may know who she is, but for those of you who don't, Brené Brown is a research professor at the University of Houston who became really famous because of her TED Talk on the power of vulnerability. So some of the key points that I want to make here is what it means to be vulnerable. So let me start by telling you a little bit about her research. You see, years ago, before Brené Brown ever became famous because of her TED Talk, she started doing research on connections in relationship. So as she reached out to these people to learn their stories about the relationships that they have and the connections that they have, the more she found out that a lot of these people have something in common. You see, in the last video, I talked about this thing called negative bias, how our brains are wired to see the negative over the positive. So what she found as she was interviewing these people is a lot of the times when they were talking about the connections that they have or the relationships they have, they were really talking more about some of the negative things that happened in those relationships. It was more about the disconnection than the connection. They all had this feeling of shame or fear, this sense of unworthiness to be loved. Like, if you really knew who I was, you wouldn't like me. If you really knew me, you wouldn't want to be my friend. That kind of shame. Which, like I said before, we've kind of all experienced at some point in our lives, but some more than others. But what Brené found is that what underlined this fear of connection was this fear of being known or seen, this fear of vulnerability. And so Brené really wanted to tackle this issue because she grew up hating vulnerability. Like, she grew up feeling that vulnerability was a weakness. Now, some of you may feel the exact same way. You may think that vulnerability is a weakness. To show yourself and open up yourself just means that you're putting yourself in a situation for more heartache and pain. So vulnerability is a weakness, right? Well, let me continue with her research. So she started this year-long process to interview more people and try and figure out this whole vulnerability thing. This ended up turning into 6 years of research for her. This was thousands of interviews from people, hundreds of stories and testimonies, a lot of data. Now, what she found after all of this research is that she could divide these people into 2 main categories. People that had a strong sense of love and belonging, and those who struggled to find it, always questioning if they were good enough. Now, the one thing that these people that had a strong sense of belonging had in common was they had this belief that they were worthy of love. That's it. They just believed they were worthy of it. Crazy, right? But think about the positive action wheel. If I think positive things, then I'm going to do positive things and I'm going to feel positive because of it. So is it so hard to believe that if I believe that I'm worthy of love, then I'm going to find love? Now, let me get back to Brené's research because she really wanted to try and figure out why is it that these people that have such a strong sense of love and connection feel so worthy. So as she went back into the research, she wrote down a few things that help describe who these people are. So the first one is courage. Now, it's important that you understand the difference between bravery and courage. You see, the original meaning of courage comes from the Latin word cur, meaning heart. And the original definition of courage meant to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. So in simple terms, these people had the courage to tell their story, to be imperfect. The next one is compassion. They have compassion for themselves and for others. They had this compassion to be kind to themselves before being kind to others. Because you see, it's really hard to love other people if you don't love yourself first. It's hard to give something that you don't have. They also had connection, which is the result of authenticity. They were willing to let go of who they thought they should be in order to fully embrace who they are. I think this one is hard for a lot of people, especially when it comes to the culture of trying to fit in. It's hard to just be authentic when you're trying to fit in with everyone else or you're comparing yourself to other people. But what Brené found in the research is that the people that had this true sense of connection and belonging had this ability to be authentic. They knew who they weren't ashamed of it. If you want to find those same kinds of connections or feel that sense of worthiness, you have to be willing to be authentic and just be you. Now, the last thing that they all had in common was vulnerability. You see, these people believed that what made them vulnerable made them beautiful. Not that vulnerability is comfortable, nor is it excruciating. It's just necessary. You see, vulnerability is this willingness to do things when there's no guarantee, like forming a relationship with someone, not knowing if it's going to work out or not. The willingness to say, I love you first.
Listen to me, you are the one I'm with. You know I love you. So will you please relax because you're driving me crazy?
You know, that's the first time you ever said that you love me.
Yeah.
Just supposed to pretend it's not a big deal?
That's exactly what we're gonna do because you're about to make me cry and we both know if I start crying, you're gonna start crying.
You're right, you should go.
All right?
Okay, so all of this research was weighing down on Brené because she herself was struggling with vulnerability and understanding that it is good, that it is necessary. For her, it was a weakness. But now she's starting to realize that maybe it's more of a strength. And this is the thing, is that we all struggle with vulnerability. I honestly am struggling with vulnerability every single time that I upload one of these videos to YouTube because I have that little bit of fear of, will they like it? But am I going to allow this fear to hold me back from speaking to you? Well, it hasn't yet, and I hope that it doesn't. But that's the thing, is I still have to conquer that fear. I have to overcome that so that way I can reach people and build connections. If I allowed that fear to hold me back, I would lose out on this opportunity that I'm getting to share with you guys. It's important that we realize vulnerability is the key to connection. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be authentic. You have to be real with people. That is what builds relationship. And it is so important that you know who you are, that you're not going to allow shame to pull you away from that, to pull you away from the truth, because you are not the problem. You are not a mistake. You are worthy of love. You just have to believe it. Sometimes that first step is the hardest one to make, but it's so necessary that you make that in order to build those connections and relationships with people. And I'll tell you from my own experience in life, it does get easier if you continue to live that way. Now, I know that looking at me or just hearing me over the last couple of weeks, you might think that I'm not the type of person that has struggled with this myself. But for those that are very close to me, that know my story, they know that I haven't had the easiest life. But if I was to go back in my past and try and correct those things or undo the wrong that's been done to me, I might not be the same person that I am today. You see, some of the struggles that we go through can either make us or break us, but it all comes down to how we see ourselves and also who we surround ourselves with. You see, I'm so much happier today because of the relationships that I've formed and my willingness to be vulnerable and authentic with these people. I would encourage you to do the same thing, and I'm sure you would find out really quickly who your true friends are. Because if you open up to your friends, and I'm not saying that you're sharing like your deepest, darkest secrets, I'm just saying that if you're willing to be real and authentic with who you are, I think you'll find that if they really do love and care about you, they're going to stick around. Okay, I think I'm going to end the video here. But before I go, I want to open up to you guys. Super vulnerability time. So for some of you, you've probably noticed in my last couple of videos that I'm struggling a little bit up top. So I've been rocking the comb over for a couple of years now. And I know that it's pretty inevitable that I'm going to go bald. And my hair's been thinning since I was like 22, 23 years old. I've had a lot of fear as far as what I'm going to look like or what the rest of my life is going to be like if I am bald. But you know, the more that I've been thinking about it, and especially with what we're talking about today, I think it's time to just shave it off. All right, so here we are. We've made it to this point. And I don't know why I'm so nervous to do this, but here we go. Oh, goodness. Oh, man. I look like Kobe from Dude Perfect. I will say it's a good thing I got a beard. I do feel like I should be saying something like,
Get in the boat, boy. Boy, this way, boy. Slow down, boy. We do what we please, boy.
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 Well, it's done.
Oh, don't cry.
All right, there we go. So I guess I'll see y'all in the next video.